rich in carbon and heavy carbon. But this is telling us that for some reason at that time there was a sudden increase in of the light carbon. Now it's tempting to relate it to the impact. We have found now microtectites at that level. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a cause and effect relationship between an impact and that event, the increase in carbon flow. If you look at that curve, you see how it dropped over about 13,000 years, we estimate. It came back over almost 100,000 years. That very asymmetric loss and recovery profile is very typical of what people see in large-scale methane dissociation events on the Earth, when you start to dissociate methane from the gas hydrate in the deep ocean. So that's another tempting way of explaining it. And then it's possible that the impact itself destabilized the gas hydrate system, and that's what put it into the atmosphere. So I'm working on that now. It's a very interesting interval up there, and the last outcrop we're going to see will be the outcrop that shows one of the top 5 extinction intervals in the Phanerozoic, the Frasnian extinction bound. We're going to look at that, and there's one view that maintains that a series of impacts at about that time, including the Flynn Creek in Tennessee, the Alamo in the western United States, the Siljan in central Sweden, and others that we haven't recognized yet. What happens is that there's this lag time of a million years or a million and a half between a sudden influx of impacts and the effects of it. And the Earth's climate at this time is beginning to cool a little bit at this time of the Devonian. And the reason that is because we're starting to expand the land plant coverage, and that was drawing down CO2 levels. But not long after this, about halfway up into the line, if you look at some of the oxygen isotope temperature data, we see that the temperature starts to increase. And there's one view that temperature increase was the effects of the meteorites hitting, for example, the Alamo in the west, the Flynn Creek hit carbonate, in the oceanic carbonate. So you hit that, you're going to put a lot of CO2 in the atmosphere, you're going to put a lot of water vapor in the atmosphere, and that could lead to temperature increases that we see. And then when we get to right near the end of the Frasnian, we see temperatures drop. And so the temperature was dropping, but then it spiked perhaps because of the impacts, and then it dropped again. And the view now is that the Frasnian extinction was driven by climate cooling at that time, sudden climate cooling. So it's interesting because according to this view, that's where you see the initial effects, and where you'll end up today would be the final effects. This extinction that wiped out 50% genera on the Earth's surface was one of the big 5 extinctions on the Earth's surface. So that's what we're at here. So that's the general stratigraphy of it, and that's what I'm doing. Randy, you want to?
Yeah. So there's two points I wanted to make here. One is what I actually kind of thought of, and it's always been sort of like a pet peeve of mine. And you being in graduate school, when you get into industry, you hear a lot of like, oh, that's academic, and there's no reason, there's no economic importance to what you're doing, and it's not important work. And one thing I would like to say is that, when I got into doing this, I went down to Memphis to a GSA convention where Gary talked about black shales. There were about 7 people there, and 4 of us were his students. So nobody cared about black shales at the time that Gary, Terry Engelder, Chuck Mitchell, all these other people were heavily invested in understanding what was going on in black shales. Now, if you told someone today that understanding black shales is a complete and utter waste of time, you're probably not going to get that job if it's in an interview or something like that. So there's something to be said for understanding these system processes, whether you can find a direct link to the immediate economic value of it or not. And something like this with these tektites, now we're talking about how that's potentially affecting global climate change, which has a large effect on the sequestering of organic material, which, as we know, in most organic rich reservoirs, the reservoir is the organic mass rolls themselves. So understanding those conditions that are leading to the accumulation of those deposits and what happens to that organic matter through time becomes very, very important to us. And then the other thing here is a little bit pragmatic. If you look at the Genundua right here, and we'll see if we can get down there and look at it. But a really interesting thing that we see here, and it's probably any guys that probably come up against this a lot, is it's all the same. The shale's all the same. Why do we need to cut a log? You know, why do we need to take a log here? Why do we need to cut a core here? It's the same. It's shales. It doesn't change. And one thing I wanted to demonstrate here is if we move down here a little bit, we'll see the Genundua and outcrop, and there's a bed underneath it. It's a bone bed. It's full of fish teeth, scales, things like that, carbonate grains. It's called the North Evans bone bed, and that sits in direct contact with the Genundua limestone. Now we're going to go down about, I don't know, a couple miles to Pike Creek. When we get there, what we'll see is that unit has now expanded, and there's, in this case, about 1.5 feet of additional sections of Penyan Shale that's present between the North Evans and the Genundua limestone. So what we can see is that in these shale-dominated successions, which everyone has thought for so long, is that pancake stratigraphy, everything's the same and it doesn't change, is that there actually are pronounced changes. Now, admittedly, this one's a small one. We're talking about the addition of like a couple feet of strata, and not tens of feet or anything like that. But you do see changes like that over very small instances in places like the Cleveland Shale, where I've been doing a lot of work out there lately. You see very large sections being chopped out by unconformity, expanded in other areas. So what we hope to demonstrate then is that, yeah, you have in these shale-dominated successions, you have pretty significant changes in stratigraphy, stuff that's present in absence over very short distances. And the neat thing about that is if you read some of the literature on what companies are accomplishing with horizontal wellbore lengths these days, what you'll find is that the straight line distance from here to Pike Creek is less than the distance than what companies like Antero, EQT, Range Resources are drilling laterals that far. So you're seeing stratigraphic changes that can occur within a wellbore. I mean, if you drill a pilot hole here and you're planning to geosteer from that, the rocks you're geosteering into might be markedly different than where you are here. You might need to do something to build some sort of change in logs along the way. So, let's see if we can get down there.
One other thing I forgot to mention, on the isotope profile, the Middlesex is defined by a sudden increase in isotope values. It's a positive excursion, which would suggest that there was a sudden increase in productivity. So that all of a sudden there's this bloom of life. This life started to use the light carbon and sequester it down in the ocean, and the surface water became enriched in the heavy carbon, and so that's why we see that. Now, these are global events. There's an event called the Middlesex event that has been recognized in Poland, in Germany, in China, and Russia. That's it. That's the type section of the Middlesex global event. There's another one called the Rhine Street event, separate from the Rhine Street Shale. That's another global event. And right about the water level is the approximate location of what's called the Taghanic anoxic event, and that's in Russia. It's another global event. So these changes that you're seeing here appear to be global, and that the ocean was connected. This part of the Appalachian Basin was, to a certain extent, connected with the global ocean, even though we were pretty far to the north of the seaway, the entranceway into the what's called the Rheic Ocean at that time. This was a shaded event, and it's called the Puntado event, named for that Conadog zone. And it's recognized in a number of different continents. It was a global event until something happened. I'm going to try to see what we can do down there.
Yeah. Any questions?
Yeah.
All right.
You know what to say?